Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about refrigerators. We'd like to thank Paul Avaluto for liking and sharing the podcast, and Jake Loddick sent us a nice email and has a tip that we'll share at the end of the podcast. In 1700 BC, there's records that Syria created ice houses to store and preserve their food. And then Alexander the Great, around 300 BC, had workers dig pits that he filled with snow to store food. And then in ancient Rome, they imported snow down from the mountains, and they had snow shops. So these snow shops would sell snow, and you would either dig a pit and fill it with straw, where you would keep the snow and then you'd shove your food in it, or they used like local caves to store food.
I didn't think you'd have anything about ancient Egypt today, since, they're in a desert.
Yeah. In the U.S., in 1790, George Washington built an ice house. He made it 18 feet deep and 16 foot square, and he filled this with stone and gravel, and then they used straw to hold ice and snow, and that's how he preserved his food. In 1802, the first ice boxes were made out of wood. They had a tin lining, and you would put a block of ice on the top of this box, and it had shelves under it that would store food, and then there was air space in between where the cold of that ice would come down. And then as that ice melted, it went to a drain, so you'd have to empty that usually like once a day.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
It's a lot of work.
It wasn't until 1913 that the first electric home refrigerator was invented. And then Freon wasn't invented until around the 1920s. We had talked about that Thomas Midgley Jr., who created that leaded gas additive. And he also helped create the Freon for these refrigerators. Because some of the first chemicals they used, they had some leaks and several people were killed from the chemicals. So Freon was much safer for people, but terrible for the environment. In fact, I was reading this environmental historian, J.R. McNeil, said that Midgley had more impact on the environment than any other single organism in Earth's history.
Wow.
Because of his lead additive.
Yeah, it wasn't a positive impact. What are the main types of refrigerators?
So you're going to see a top freezer, a bottom freezer, side-by-side, French door, and then we'll talk about a couple specialty built-in and minis. So your top freezer is probably the most traditional type of refrigerator you'll see. So you have the freezer on top. This was made around 1940, and it still accounts for about half of all the refrigerator sales.
Interesting.
Yeah. Usually the least expensive, around $400 to $1,000 is probably the most typical prices you'll see. And they have a wide variety of sizes, of colors. Usually there's no indoor water or ice. And the average dimensions on this style is 30 inches wide to 33 inches, 31 inches deep, and about 66 inches tall.
Well, when we started this research for the podcast, I was really surprised at how expensive refrigerators are, and the wide range of...
Yeah, the technology has really changed, and the chemicals they're using in them, and then the technology that they're putting in the refrigerators.
Right, yeah.
You have a bottom freezer, so you've got your fridge on top, and you've got your freezer on the bottom, and it's usually a pull-out drawer, but some have a door, which is real weird, which would be hard to get into if you don't have a drawer style. And
although the drawer style, if it's just a big drawer, all your stuff is just packed on
right, you
top
just
of
dump it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the better refrigerators have shelves.
Yeah.
So as you pull that drawer open, then they've got a couple thin shelves that come above the main bottom. Some people find this, the best because it puts all your fresh food right in easy reach, especially if you don't do a lot with your frozen foods. And these are going to average around $800 to $2,000. The average dimensions are 30 to 36 inches wide, so usually a little wider, 32 inches deep, and 67 inches tall. You can get a side-by-side style. So this was starting to be marketed in the 1950s, and it has two full-length doors that kind of split the fridge in half, or at least in two parts. So the freezer is usually on the left and smaller, and then on the right side you have your refrigerator. And what's weird is the width of the freezer is usually much more narrow than other styles. So it's sometimes difficult to organize. Some people say that's kind of the criticism of this. This comes in a wide variety of models. And the side-by-side, they need less clearance to get the doors open. So these are very good for narrow kitchens. If you don't have a lot of space, or your walkway is very narrow because the doors are shorter rather than one big long door. In general, you get these from 32 to 36 inches wide, about 30 inches deep, and 71 inches tall. And many of these, you're going to see water and ice in the door.
Right.
You know, one of the biggest complaints I saw with the side-by-sides?
No.
Is people said they couldn't put their frozen pizzas in there. And the side-by-sides run around $800 to $1,500.
Well, I think these were very popular as soon as, like, the avocado green refrigerators went out of style, or the almond.
Right.
Because my parents had I think their refrigerator was the avocado green.
Yeah.
It was gross.
I painted so many of those when I worked for a spray paint company for a few years, and all those old avocados, Harvest Gold. I used to change all those colors over to just white or black.
Yeah. So the people I used to babysit for when I was younger, across the street, they got a new refrigerator. It was a side-by-side. You know, she had 2 young boys, and she couldn't fit anything in the freezer, so she had to end up getting one of those 4-foot, like, wide freezers that were in, like, the utility room.
Right, exactly.
And that's where she stored, like, all of her food.
And the pizzas.
And like, there was just, like, ice cream in her in her freezer.
Yeah, funny. In the 1990s, the French door style became popular, and this is actually becoming more and more popular. So you've got a bottom freezer with double doors on the top refrigerator part.
Right.
So you can open both those double doors, and it's all your refrigerator, and so you can get very wide things like if you have platters and things like that in there. And it also, a couple of the pros I saw about the French door design was you don't lose as much cold air. If you put the items that you generally use on one side of the door, you just have to open one door, grab that and close it, rather than like a traditional top freezer where you open that big door and you're opening the whole space to air. Most of these, you're going to have water and ice in the door. You've got a wide range of options and features with this style. 30 to 36 inches wide, 29 inches deep, and 68 inches tall is probably the most common. And these will range anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000.
Cha-ching.
And then these French door styles, they're also popular in counter depth. So this is a very shallow refrigerator, or it's at least a few inches more shallow, and so it matches the depth of the cabinet. So it looks like a built-in.
Right.
You've got that look without spending the money for a built-in or something that's custom designed. But there's less space for storage in that, and those run from $1,500 to $3,500.
Yikes.
With the built-in refrigerators, these are generally cabinet depth body, usually wider, 36 inches and wider. You can get it either in a bottom freezer, a side-by-side, or a French door style.
Which I really don't understand what this means, the built-in.
So what's interesting is most of these, generally they don't have a finished top or side, so it's designed to be just slid right in. Like if you're redoing your kitchen and you're designing your layout and your cabinets, this is really, so there's like in a typical refrigerator, the sides, the top, they're all finished.
Right.
With these, they're designed to slide in between cabinets, so the sides, the top are unfinished. And so it just disappears. So it's designed to fit right inside the cabinets that you're building.
So is it like the same color as your cabinets?
No, so you would build your cabinets around it. And you can get custom panels to put on. Let's say one side shows, or a small portion. Let's say you have your upper cabinets and your lower cabinets, and just a small portion of the side of the fridge would show. Then you can get a custom panel for that. You can then get these optional panels for the doors, so it's going to match the cabinets exactly, depending on who's designing your kitchen. So very interesting. And these are going to be your most expensive. They usually start around $2,000, and they go up very, very, very expensive, depending on all the options you have in it. Then for a compact or mini fridge, this is usually just a small one door. You've got the freezer inside the refrigerator compartment, and these usually run about $100 to $300. Great for extra storage. If you're just storing extra soda for parties, like for dorm rooms, offices, and it's just a very convenient way to have a fridge without buying a huge refrigerator.
Well, because when I bought my condo, the refrigerator was really small.
Right.
That was in the kitchen, so I have a mini fridge that I store all my pop in.
Right. Yeah, smart.
Which is nice. What are the main things you need to think about when you're buying a refrigerator?
So the key thing is the space between the cabinets and the height. So, and then also, does the door open to the right or left, or do you want it to open to the right or the left?
Right.
Is it reversible? So if you get like a traditional refrigerator with the freezer on the top, do you have the option to reverse those doors, the swing of it? The French door style is going to fit in most spaces, but you have to be aware that it may not fully open. One of the doors may not fully open if you've got it against a wall. Most are going to require about an inch worth of space all the way around the fridge for air circulation, so you don't want to measure a fridge where it's going completely up against that upper cabinet.
Oh, really?
Or even against the sides. They want a little bit of air movement. One of the biggest mistakes people make is not measuring the entryway to get into the house.
Yeah, that would probably be a key feature.
So know how wide your doorway is, and then the turns that you're going to have to make.
Yeah.
And how wide is the refrigerator you're making? Can the door come off?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to get help? Sometimes it pays to have the company
Deliver it?
Yeah. So it's funny, a lot of times we'd get these frantic pages, like with my tenants that I had for years, saying they just bought a fridge and they can't get it in the house. And many of these models you can't lay on the side
Oh, really?
to get it in. Yeah.
I used to get pages.
Yeah.
Like from a pager.
Yeah, and then I'd have to run to a pay phone. So in general, what you're looking for as far as size, if you have a family of 4, most of these manufacturers recommend about a 30 cubic foot refrigerator. If you have a family of 2, around a 20 cubic foot refrigerator. I would always look for the Energy Star. These are the most energy efficient models, and they're required to use 20% less than the federal standards for the refrigerators. So that's substantial. And then another thing to think about is, do I have water supplies? So if you bought a refrigerator that has the indoor water or ice, or even if you have an ice maker in your refrigerator, do you have the water supply? And before you put it in, you'd want to do any of that work to run a line before you put it in place.
Yeah, you pay the extra money for it and you can't use it.
Yeah.
What kind of features do refrigerators come with nowadays?
So a lot of variety,
I know.
which pretty amazing. So we're talking about water and ice. They've got a bunch of new styles that have huge openings, so you can put like a pitcher in there to get ice. They also have styles that do large quantities of ice. So it'll drop a huge load of ice at a time if you have a party.
Well, my aunt and uncle at Christmas, they just said that they bought a new refrigerator and that the ice shoots out at them. So you have to make sure you're ready with your cup.
That's funny. Well, they've got some that have like areas where you can put a sport bottle in there for convenience. And then GE has this precise fill dispenser. So it's got a display, and let's say you were doing a recipe and you need a third of a cup of water. You enter that in, and it has precise amounts of water for recipes.
Oh, so you don't have to have a measuring cup?
Right, exactly. For the ice maker, you can get a variety of different shapes, so whatever your preference is. And then some have dual ice makers. So a small amount comes through the door, and then they have a second ice maker that's in the freezer.
Oh.
So like LG and Samsung were rated very high with these. Some of these refrigerators have hot water dispensers in the door.
No way.
So you can make hot tea or soup. And then GE has a model with a built-in Keurig pod coffee maker. So right in the
space
door.
on your counter.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so pretty cool.
Well, we watched a video on all these features. I'm like, holy
Just
Toledo.
amazing. Samsung, they partnered with SodaStream. So we saw this company at one of the last hardware shows we went to. It has that seltzer water with all the different flavors. So they have a model that you can connect those bottles to.
Wow.
And then there's models with climate control for different compartments. It keeps a variety of foods fresher longer. GE has this frost guard system to prevent freezer burn. And then some of these had a built-in wine rack, and it has the exact temperature that wine should be at. LG has a model with a blast chiller, so it says it'll take a warm can of soda, and in less than 5 minutes you're going to have the perfect temperature on your soda. And then a couple models have antibacterial coatings on the inside of the fridge, and then spill-proof shelves. They have this lip. So if you have a small, obviously a large spill is going to be a problem. But for small spills, it contains it for you.
Oh, that's nice.
Some models have computerized touch screens that help with your dinner plans. So you can enter in all of the ingredients you have in the house into your refrigerator, and then it's going to give you menu ideas for what you can make.
Wow.
You can have apps on that door too. So your most popular apps, if you want to, access Facebook while you're in the kitchen, it has television options. Whirlpool has a model where it sends you a text when your water filter needs to be changed, Or if the power goes out, it sends you a text.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so very interesting, the technology. A really practical feature are adjustable shelves or sliding shelves. A lot of these, they'll slide half the size of the shelf.
Right,
so you can
the
push
depth changes.
Right, so you can put tall things in front and you still have the shelves in place and you can constantly change that. The glass and plastic shelves are rated the best. It makes cleanup easier. And then the wire shelves, it's hard. It's unstable with small items.
Right. Do you have any maintenance tips?
Most manufacturers are recommending that you clean your condenser coils at least 2 times a year.
So these are the coils on the back of your refrigerator.
Right. So you want to make sure that you can pull your fridge out, especially if you're hooking up a water line to if you have indoor water or if you have an ice maker. You want to have enough room so that you can pull this out because you really want to keep that clean. And then also on the back, you're going to have the motor and a few different things back there. Clean all behind there. Either use an appliance brush, which is like that cone-shaped brush. And you can also get behind and underneath the fridge with this. Or you can use a vacuum attachment, the brush vacuum attachment. You'd want to clean your door gaskets at least 2 times a year so that it closes and seals properly. Change your water filter 2 times a year. Clean all of the interior shelves and surfaces at least 2 times a year.
That's it? I clean my refrigerator every month.
Well, more is better.
Yeah. What are some top-rated companies?
So GE was rated really high in general, and then the GE Cafe style, this is their models with all of the electronics and all of the features.
Cool.
Yeah, amazing. Kenmore Elite, Kenmore, and Kenmore Pro were all rated very high.
They had some really cool videos, too.
Yeah, it's worth taking a little time before you shop, is to just go online and see all of the features. Samsung, Whirlpool, Frigidaire, KitchenAid, and LG were all rated very high.
Let's talk about some food safety tips.
So most of the pros are saying you should keep your fridge around 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Many of the manufacturers are suggesting 40 degrees, but that is way too close to the danger zone where bacteria takes off. So 41 degrees to 140 degrees is where bacteria like Salmonella and Listeria just take off. So if you keep it a little lower than that 40, so around 35, 36 degrees, if you have kids or people who are constantly opening the doors, you can really raise the temperature of the food pretty quickly, and you can really encourage this bacteria growth. So what's wild is Listeria. So this is found in soil and decaying vegetation. About 1,500 people are hospitalized every year.
I've never heard of this.
Really?
Yeah.
So 200 people die every year on average because of Listeria.
Wow,
it's
that's
the
crazy.
third leading cause of food poisoning. And you know where the biggest outbreaks are?
No.
Deli meat, hot dogs, and soft Mexican-style cheese.
Oh, no.
So you want to keep your refrigerator cool
Right.
around that 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And then for your freezer, most pros suggest 0 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want to keep it -10 to -20, it's considered the safest. What's interesting is a couple studies that they did. If you leave a fridge door open for any amount of time, it can very quickly get up to 55 to 60 degrees.
Oh, you're kidding.
So they're saying you never want to put anything that can spoil very quickly or grow bacteria very quickly right on the door. They're suggesting mayo or ketchup, mustard, condiments, especially things like pickles that are in a liquid that are going to hold that cold temperature that you keep on the doors.
Right.
And then everything else you want deeper into the fridge. The coldest area is on the bottom and the back of the fridge. And then I was curious about butter because it usually has that compartment on the door.
Right.
I was looking at the USDA, and they said that you should only leave butter out for 15 minutes at a time.
Like outside the refrigerator?
Outside the refrigerator, like on your counter.
My parents are screwed then.
It's interesting, isn't
My
it?
dad refuses to have cold butter. The butter dish is always on the counter.
Well, they say there's a lot of varieties of butter, and the heavily salted butters, I guess, can stand up to bacterial growth. It's going to prevent quick bacterial growth.
Yeah.
But the USDA said, in general, from all their experiments, just don't leave butter out.
Yeah.
Which is like a lot of these chefs.
Well, it's funny because, like, growing up, like I said, the butter dish is always on the counter. And when we would go to my grandparents' house, Grandma always kept it in the refrigerator.
Right,
so I was
right.
like, oh, cold butter. What is this?
And then the FDA recommends that meat, poultry, seafood, eggs, milk, any of these refrigerated items should never be left out for more than 2 hours.
Eggs should always be kept in the carton.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
The cardboard prevents the smells from getting onto the eggs.
Yeah, eggs have thousands of tiny pores, and that cardboard helps protect it. It absorbs the odors first.
Eggs should always be kept with the large end up, too, like how they're packaged in the carton.
Yeah, weird. Keeps the yolk centered. And then the carton's nice because it has the date on it, so you don't forget, because I would have no clue.
Yeah, like anybody's going to keep track of that, right? You're going to write on the eggs, I guess?
That's great. It gives me a new routine. You should also let hot food cool down before putting into the fridge. It heats up all the food around it, and then the overall temperature of the fridge goes up.
That's crazy.
I've got some things you shouldn't keep in your fridge.
Okay.
So tomatoes, they lose their flavor. You should keep them in a bowl on the counter. Potatoes turn starchy. Onions get soft and moldy. That's wild, huh? Bread dries out faster in the fridge. Olive oil gets thick. Coffee loses its flavor. Honey starts to crystallize in the fridge.
Wow.
And then garlic starts to sprout. So they say that you should keep your garlic in a dark, dry place.
Interesting. I have to take tomatoes, potatoes, onions, and garlic out of my refrigerator now. An interesting website I found was foodsafety.gov, and they have a whole list of guidelines on how long you should keep different types of food in your refrigerator and your freezer.
Yeah, fascinating.
About 6 months ago, my parents were out of town, and I had cleaned out their freezer, and they had meat in there that was, the date on it was a year ago.
Right.
So all that went into the garbage. I mean, I threw out a whole
bag.
They
freak out when they got home?
Well, it was organized. I mean, it was still packed. I don't know how all that stuff fit in the freezer, but...
Yeah.
You know, just because it goes into the freezer doesn't mean that it's going to stay good forever. Well, the quality really diminishes.
What's weird, like hot dogs, they're saying only 1 to 2 months in the freezer, and 1 week if it's in your fridge.
And like an unopened package of hot dogs is like only 2 weeks in the refrigerator. I didn't know that.
Yeah, interesting. They say that if you put a whole chicken or a turkey in the freezer, it lasts a year.
Oh, who knew?
So a very nice list at foodsafety.gov.
Do you have anything else to add?
I saw an interesting statistic. If your electricity goes off, your refrigerator is only going to keep your food safe for about 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it would be much longer than that. A freezer, if it's half full, will keep it frozen and safe for about 24 hours. And if your freezer is full, about 48 hours.
Interesting.
Before you're purchasing your fridge, I would make sure that you measure the entrance to your house so that you can get it in. You want to measure the width and height of the space that you're going to put your fridge in between the cabinets. You want to leave about 1 inch above and off to the side. The French door style is probably most versatile in features because it'll fit into a very small kitchen because of the size of the doors it'll open. And then think about the right-handed or left-handed. If you're getting a top freezer or a bottom freezer and you've got one big large door, can it open? Right,
because originally the refrigerator that I had here when I purchased a condo, it swung open against the entrance door.
Right. So you could only open it to a 90.
Right.
So your shelves in the door were in the way trying to get stuff out of the fridge rather than opening all the way.
So when I was going to redo the kitchen, originally we were just going to get a door that swung the opposite way.
Right.
Because that's where the electric was, but instead we moved the electric further down.
Right, and then moved the fridge placement too.
Now it could swing all the way open.
And then the other thing you want to think about is your water supply. So if you have water or ice in the door or an ice maker, run your water first before you get your fridge. So Jake sent us a tip about how he seals his caulk tubes after he uses part of it, and there's still some left.
Because I don't think it's possible.
So he uses duct seal. So this is like a putty that you put into the seams of ductwork,
right?
And it creates an airtight seal for your ductwork. So much better efficiency for your ducts. And so he breaks off a piece of, and it's very cheap. For a brick, it's about $3. He breaks off a piece and rolls it into a ball, and he uses this to cover the tip of his caulk. And so it creates an airtight seal on top of the caulk tube, and then he's able to reuse the caulk. So it's a nice idea.
We're going to have to try it.
There we go. Video.
Nice. Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.